We're going to talk about books. So we spoke about people who can't read, people who I don't even know what yours was about.
I have great music taste.
To be honest, this whole podcast has been very confusing so far, and I don't understand. But I'm going to end with something that's pretty usual for us, which is dunking on the left.
Okay. Oh, right, yes, we
because
can do that.
The left don't understand what the word band means. Because band as in B-A-N-N-E-D.
Not B-A-N-D.
Right. Okay.
Not a musical band.
We're not doing another music segment.
Okay.
Band as if you can't access this thing anymore.
Yes.
Because they seem to think that a book that you can access and purchase from any mainstream retailer, you could go down to your local corner bookshop and buy a book there. And you can get off Amazon and have it sometimes same-day delivery. You can get it from anywhere at a very reasonable price. But your local school doesn't want it in particular sections of the library because perhaps it has some rather adult themes and content in it, means that the book is banned.
But as we know from MindGeek/ALO, they are targeting their material at children. So let's put it this way. That explicit material is being aimed at kids. Why are we surprised that it is in the libraries in the first place?
Well, it shouldn't be in any section of the library, but we'll get into that as we go on. I thought I'd highlight that on the website we have a wide range of material that you can access. Not all of it's paid content. You can also access some of the free articles that we have on the website, including this very interesting one on an introduction to the Whig hegemony, which is a short article going over the history of the 18th century parliamentary politics, which almost destroyed the party, God, I wish, and led to the Whig theory of history and the Whig attitudes becoming very prevalent throughout all of English politics. So check that out if you want a nice history lesson. For people who don't want a nice history lesson, that being the left, here is what I'm talking about there. Barnes & Noble, this was a very popular tweet that came out because it got a lot of attention. Shout out to Barnes & Noble for their banned books section. We need more people and organizations standing up for the freedom to read these books.
I can see genderqueer at the top there, which is literally about child abuse.
Yes, and also This Book is Gay, which I'll get into in a moment. They have some of the classics there, like To Kill a Mockingbird. All of these, some of them are, all of these obviously are available at any mainstream bookstore.
Well, including on this very shelf where
we advertise
books.
And for these retailers, I can imagine there is a part of it where this is all a marketing strategy, where if you attach some kind of transgressive label to it, where you say, oh, look, this is a banned book. The system doesn't want you to read this book. Ignore that we're a large international conglomeration and we are the system. But the system, the shadowy figures, the conservatives, Ben Shapiro, doesn't want you reading This Book is Gay. So therefore it's banned and therefore you should buy it. I can understand that. For a lot of leftists, I think this is either one of two things, which is either they are really, really stupid, or they know how this looks to normal people and they're just using it to rub in your face. It's a sort of LARP.
I think it's that one because, as you can see for our audio listeners, there are branded bags, like tote bags that you'll get from bookshops at the bottom, and I think it's branded off of
books.
Yeah, and it's branded off of Fahrenheit 451, which is the dystopic novel by Ray Bradbury about firefighters who go around incinerating banned texts. So this is obviously just them trying to codify a transgressive identity. They're trying to look punk by saying, actually, all of the things that the regime wants you to believe are secretly subversive and rebellious, bro.
So I can think of a couple of actually banned books that you just can't get your hands off, but they tend to address a different topic.
I've got an example of one, but would you... what examples were you thinking of, Dan?
How close to the sun are you about to fly?
Would you label them?
Oh, God.
Let's just say it's unlikely that you'll
how
find...
to describe this? Books which talk about European groups and their history kind of thing.
I mean, to be fair, after recent events with mass Islamic migration and the various demonstrations we've seen in the streets, I wouldn't be shocked if they are in some schools in Britain, questioning certain historical narratives.
Well, you just can't get them. So
let's just say it's unlikely that you would ever find a copy of The Bell Curve in a public school library.
Yeah.
Yes, good point.
But whenever you look into these books, we cover this constantly. You get examples like This Book is Gay, which the second that you look into it, I didn't even know this one. This must be a more recent one. I'm aware of genderqueer and some of the others, but apparently this one has tutorials of how to use grinder
Yep.
and to have reverse
rectal enjoyment.
Yeah, anal sex.
Okay, well, I was trying to be euphemistic, but there you go.
Redheaded Libertarian points out this book was in middle school libraries. Why do you want 11-year-olds learning how to do all of that, Chris? You know why. Do I have to tap the sign? It's very clear why. And there are plenty of other examples. It's all indoctrination. It's all this very clearly well-adjusted person whose opinions are all completely novel and original.
With the broccoli haircut.
You can, gender ambiguous. Who knows? Throw all categorization to the wind. Writes for the ACLU of Texas, my favorite organization. The one of the great defenders of children's right to access pornography, the ACLU.
No, you're right. Actually, there was a Texas case that overthrew their age verification law because they said it's actually free speech to be able to access porn without checking a little box or putting a passport.
And we know that the alphabet people is a phenomena of public schools, because basically what was happening is alphabet people rates were trending up and to the right up until the pandemic when the schools were closed, and then it immediately started going down.
Until TikTok came along. And then now we've seen as...
It would almost suggest some kind of characteristics of a social contagion.
Well, yes. Policy Exchange and Stonewall, two organizations you wouldn't expect to agree, but both put the stat as by 18, 1 in 4 school children in the UK are leaving school with an LGBT identity within that umbrella. I
would say that the vast majority of those are likely to be bisexual.
Yes, they are.
Which is the easiest one to pass off because you can just say it. I've known people, some people I used to be in bands with.
I've dated bi girls before, but literally just don't date girls.
Well, one of them was a guy who says, oh, I'm bisexual, I'm definitely bisexual. And then all of his partners, all of his relationships have been with women. And then I just asked him, just casually, you keep saying you're bisexual. Have you ever done anything with a guy? He says, no. Right. Then,
Isn't that what the eye is supposed to be for?
That's intersex.
Oh, I thought it was infected.
No. But we're all intersex.
Oh.
In one way or another. But this is a funny article because, once again, it just shows the LARP of the whole matter, where this person, I assume this image is Ms. P who wrote it, but it might be just a general image of this is the kind of fool that would fall for something or believe something like this, saying that I grew up in a small border town along the Rio Grande. In 9th grade, my teacher assigned The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. The story follows a young Mexican-American girl who yearns for acceptance as she discovers her identity. Like her name, Esperanza, she gave me hope for understanding my own Latin and queer identities. So these people, in all honesty, probably wouldn't find any of these books for themselves first without a teacher pushing them onto them, which is why they're so desperate to have them in schools in the first place, because nobody actually goes out searching for these books unless they're already a rabid leftist activist.
It's also important to remember a few things. Number one, at school board meetings where parents have complained about this, they've read out passages from the book and been ejected for reading out explicit materials, but they're saying, you're giving this to my child.
Nobody actually reads them except for the radical leftist activist teachers reading them to the kids, and the actual administration of the school don't pay any attention. They just hear that, oh, this is inclusive, this is positive and tolerant towards people of strange identities. Therefore, it must be a good thing. But when you confront them with it, they realize, oh, this is sexual perversion.
Yeah. And so the radical ideologues have come from the universities because they couldn't get any other jobs. So they then infiltrate education and they then set the curriculum and put things like the hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish and give that to 3-year-olds. And then also it's important to remember that loads of these books are coming from scholastic book fairs and they receive direct government subsidies. So the US government is taking your tax money, American viewers, to pay to have these perverted books in kids' schools. Of course, you should be banning them at the state level.
But let's see what other books are supposedly banned that you should desperately read, according to Ms. P. And Tango Makes 3 by Justin Richardson with themes of love and acceptance.
Wait, makes 3?
With themes of love and acceptance, you need to accept the love, Connor, and love can come in many different forms.
As Destiny has recently learned.
This heartwarming story, Stelios will tell you all about that tomorrow. This heartwarming story introduces young readers to the beauty of diverse families as 2 male penguins create their own. Why I recommend this book, combination of sweet story, blah, yada, yada, yada. Then we've got Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe, which I can only assume is
how do 2 male
Reddit's favorite book.
Their own family? I mean, they don't have adoption.
Don't ask questions, Dan. Just accept.
Right, okay. Stolen egg?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I suppose so.
So we've got Reddit's favorite book about Aristotle and Dante finding out quirky trivia about the universe.
They're just bumming through the 7 circles of hell.
Maybe. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, which I almost misread as avocado. An authentic story of a young Afro-Latina finding her voice and herself through verse. Now, can you imagine that any of these books are any more than maybe half a day away from most people being able to buy for themselves and have directly in their hands?
Not just. Should we do a book club on one of them?
Oh, no.
Don't make me read. And, drum roll please, what's the last one going to be? It's The Handmaid's
Okay,
Tale.
I will actually do a book club on that at some point because it's one of the worst books I've ever read. And this
It's
is
also
and
assigned to people on their
I know, I
English
did
course.
it. I did it.
Isn't that the one where she wrote the first draft and it was about Islam?
No,
Change.
you can draw parallels to Islam, but she explicitly meant it about Christians because she's a delusional old dingbat. But point being, look, as someone who wasted a lot of money on a literature degree and actually enjoys this sort of stuff, I know it's intentionally subversive, but this is what Chris Rufo means by a cluster B society, of where to get ahead, you must manifest like dark triad, psychopathic, narcissistic traits. It's really sad that the literature being given to children now by these activists has lowered the quality of literature that's going to turn them off reading, because all of the things that you've read out are just masturbatory identity stories knocked together by fundamentally mediocre and insecure people that need to spread their misery like a contagion. It's not like Frankenstein.
Oftentimes they'll also be terribly written. There won't be any poetry in the prose. There won't be any driving force to it. Oftentimes the characters will all be speaking in the exact same voice because the writer, being a narcissist as they always are, can only write from their own perspective and can't put their mind into the mind. They can't project their mind into what other people would think, and so everybody talks like them. This is a problem that I've pointed out before with lots of television scripts where everybody talks the way that you expect Californians to talk.
The Joss Whedonification of everything.
Yeah, because they can only talk, and everybody speaks with inserting F words in between every other sentence, because in California, in Hollywood, I imagine, that's what these people talk like in their day-to-day life.
It's just really heartbreaking to know that like the English curriculum has removed people like John Keats and Wilfred Owen, who lived kind of tragic but also inspirational lives as young men in difficult times, who did acts of service and created some of the most beautiful poetry and literature that we've ever seen. And they've jettisoned that for "this book is gay." People have
even when I was
place
a
in
kid,
hell.
we were getting books pushing diversity in inner city living and stuff like that. And I had to spend a whole term sat outside the headmaster's office because I wasn't allowed in the English class because I kicked up such a fuss about why aren't we reading like classic English literature, or maybe a bit of Shakespeare or Canterbury Tales or anything like that. Just pick one of those. So I got thrown out my English class for like a whole term because of that.
And that's going to happen to a lot of boys that are just bored and therefore cut off with the richness of our culture and our history, and it stops the transmission of the kind of values that will make them great men. This is what C.S. Lewis observed at Abolition of Man, because they want to make you empty vessels for the current thing.
Well, I mean, my greatest disappointment from all this, apart from the obvious, is that reading's really fun, and it really stimulates your imagination and allows you to, as I mentioned, project your mind into other people's feelings, to be able to simulate other people's minds. Helps you to empathize. It helps you to be able to think abstractly, and cutting people off from that because you're feeding them this absolute dross and they'll never want to read a book ever again after they've read The Handmaid's Tale for the 3rd time in this curriculum means that they're going to be cut off from, like you say, not just their culture, but also just from a really enjoyable pastime, and be going straight for the pipeline to TikTok.
Yeah.
Because a book requires an attention span. And TikTok does not.
I know someone who works in a primary school now who have said, as of Christmas, they don't want to watch Christmas films because they're too long and boring. These kids have been raised on TikTok and they can only watch things in 30 seconds.
When I was at school, the Christmas film at the end of the year was the treat.
The day, yeah.
And it was the thing that you always looked forward to. That's absurd. But
sorry to interrupt the video, but I thought I'd announce that we have a new line of merch. This is our aesthetics collection. So I was thinking that in the face of AI art debasing the very concept of art, actually we'd do something quite positive. So we commissioned a series of paintings that were actually really beautiful and could be something that we could present outside of politics. So for example, we have this magnificent painting of a ship weathering a storm, which I thought was just really nice. And we have, of course, a glorious sort of surrealist giant white tiger drinking from a lake. But also there are other things that are just kind of interesting, such as the chap lost in cyberspace, or something that I thought might in time for Christmas, make a great present for your mum or something like that, a beautiful cat lounging on some clouds. Basically, we wanted to do some stuff that wasn't just political, so things that were just nice and beautiful and interesting, because that's also a part of the world we want to curate. So you can go over to shop.lotuses.com. Buying the merch is a really great way of supporting us and means that we can live past demonetization. And I'm sure they make great gifts for the folks as well.
The LARP has gotten so bad now that you have people actually swearing in to their position as a president of the school board on banned books.
Right.
If you were able to get a pile of them so that you could swear in on them, then they're not banned. It's just that this person, I believe her name was what was her name? Let me see.
Go down.
Where is it in the thing?
Karen Smith.
Karen Smith.
The irony.
Yes, Karen Smith. She was chosen as the president of the Central Book School Board earlier this month and decided that rather than being sworn in with her hand on the Bible, because that would be far too significant and meaningful and actually be a tradition, she would be sworn in with her hand on a stack of frequently banned books, because that way she can get virtue points online. She and other Democrats like her had been vocal about their opposition to the former Republican-led school board's policy to prohibit so-called sexual content. It's not so-called, it is, making it easier to ban books from school libraries, particularly those with LGBTQ+ or diversity-related themes. How dare you not let me propagandize and brainwash our students?
Hold on. So-called sexual content complain the coalition premised entirely on sexual characteristics.
Yes.
Right, so just a microcosm.
This is not necessarily contradiction. They're doing this on purpose and they're rubbing it in your face.
But just a microcosm of the problem we got here. You're supposed to swear in on the Bible, or maybe, I don't know, in the US they let you do it on the Constitution, but it's supposed to be something like the Bible, and we've diluted that and diluted it. The whole reason you're supposed to swear in on the Bible, because it keeps these nutters out. And then, so, I mean, we went like,
well, she said
30 years ago, we started letting people sign in on the Quran and stuff like that.
Someone did a Superman comic recently.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole point of it is to keep these nutters out.
I mean, she explicitly said when talking about why she did it that the Bible doesn't hold any significant meaning for me. I could have told you that. I could have guessed that looking at you. And she was very annoyed that under the previous presidency of the school board, that there were a lot of conservative policies such as, not having these books in the school library. But once again, if you're a parent and you're so desperate for your children to read these books, then you can buy them yourself.
I think she was probably upset by the prohibition on gluttony.
Well, maybe. She also said that there was a policy that restricted trans female students from participating in female sports teams, so she's got rid of that rule, and a policy that banned pride flags in classrooms for fear of teachers indoctrinating students, which is exactly what she's eager. She's pro-brainwashing children. So, and of course, Pink, who loves to go around and recently, when she was in Florida, I think gave out 2,000 supposedly banned books to the audience members in her crowds. She was all for this. She said, I went near this school. I'm from near this school. I'm so proud to be from here. But looking at it, somebody made this video. I won't play it properly because there's a copyright song in the background. But here she is signing it in. And what have we got here on these books? What's one of them? One of them's a book called Flamer. What's in the book? Flamer. For those of you not watching and just listening, it's gay porn.
Oh, okay.
It's gay porn.
Wait, is that an adult man exposing himself to a 6-year-old?
It might have been. Either way, it's not appropriate for children. So what a...
Wait, it's not appropriate for bloody adults either. It's not appropriate for anyone because
it's certainly not educational.
So she's swearing in.
She doesn't know. She hasn't read them.
She's not read any of these. She's not read any of these, but a lot of these school boards are enacting more and more of these supposed bans where they say, actually, we don't want this on the curriculum. And as such, Penguin Random House, along with lots of writers and educators and parents in Iowa, which is one of the states that's looking to be able to empower school boards to get this filth off of their shelves, decided to throw a lawsuit, a high-stakes election year issue of book banning. They filed suit in federal court against the state's school administrators, including the president of the state's Board of Education, to stop local enforcement of a law known as Senate File 496, which the Governor Kim Reynolds signed into force in May. So this is how you know that you're on the side of the little guy. This is how you know that you're the subversive, destructive element of an oppressive hierarchical society when you're organizing yourself with a gigantic corporate entity that operates on an international scale to bully local school districts into stocking porn on their shelves for children.
I don't want to derail, but I'm really mad about this for multiple reasons. Number one, Penguin Random House censored Jordan Peterson's second book, and they had an internal revolt about publishing it. So they're clearly happy with banning. Also, recently we had the rewrites of Roald Dahl and James Bond, so they're totally fine to go back in and take out the N-word or the fact that Augustus Gloop was fat because they're crying about outdated stereotypes or whatever nonsense they want to get upset about. But in this photo, again, for audio listeners, either side of the door that they've got at a bookstore in Florida, they say, censorship leaves us in the dark, we read banned books. Now, they have listed The Great Gatsby, The Catcher in the Rye, and The Lord of the Rings. Those are some of my favorite books of all time. And they've also got Mice and Men and Brave New World, and they're things with deep literary resonance, real quality, some of the stories that I actually personally really connect with. To equate that to subversive cartoons of indecent exposure to children, I can't express the level of pissed off I am. I'm
And like half of these books have had films made about them as well.
Yeah, multiple films, some of them.
Yeah, but interestingly, the Telegraph have quite a good article recently talking about a lot of these books, saying that giving details, not just of the content of some of them, but also by the process why some of the organizations that track how these books are banned actually qualify them as being banned. So they point out last week, this was back in October, so this would be the end of September they're talking about, Randy Weingarten, president of America's second largest teachers union, tweeted, Texas teacher fired for reading Diary of Anne Frank to class. This speaks for itself. But like almost every other aspect of overall book banning claims, the description of this example is distorted and conceals the legitimate objection most parents have to children being exposed to explicitly sexual content in school. The book in question was not the classic Diary of Anne Frank, but a recent graphic novel adaptation of that work, because even when you're trying to propagandize the students, you need to make sure you're giving them picture books rather than actual books, because otherwise they won't pay attention. It's called Anne Frank's Diary, that chooses to emphasize and inflate sexual passages in the original diary.
That's just also sorry, but why are you drawing a graphic novel about a teenage girl emphasizing the sexual experience of her when she died in the Holocaust?
That's a very good question. So the explicit passage that was from the book was where Anne asks her friends if they could show each other their breasts and expresses a terrible desire to kiss her. All of this would have been illustrated.
So Anne Frank's now retroactively a lesbian?
I mean, it might have been I've not read the original diary, so it might originally be in there. It'd be a very strange thing to read.
There are bits.
I have heard that there are some very strange passages.
It's just a teenage girl growing up figuring stuff out.
Yeah, so the entire conversation on book banning has taken place under a false definition promulgated by the left-wing advocacy group PEN America, which says that it has discovered an unprecedented spike in bans, but it defines ban so expansively as to render the term meaningless. If a book has been temporarily removed, reviewed, and then returned to a shelf, it has, according to PEN, been banned. If a school places a parental permission requirement on a book, it has, according to PEN, been banned. If a school moves a book to a guidance counselor's office, it has, according to PEN, been banned. A school in Miami made international news when it banned Biden's inauguration poem by Amanda Gorman. What really happened was that the K-8 school moved the poem from the elementary to the middle school section of the same library. Given that most English language speakers understand the word ban to mean made unavailable, we conducted a study to determine how many of the 2,532 books that PEN America alleged were banned were actually still present in school libraries. The answer, about 3/4 of them. And I'm going to be honest, judging by the books that we look at in these segments, I'm going to imagine that's still far too many.
Yeah, they should.
That will still be far too many, and that will include a lot of books that really should have no right being stocked in an educational institute. The media also fabricated the narrative that book bans are about race. We found that while some parents have certainly objected to books about race, school districts almost never obliged them. For example, PEN America listed the Black Lives Matter inspired The Hate You Give, not a book that anybody should be reading as part of their school curriculum, as the 5th most banned book. We found it available in every single school library in question. Consider the top 10 most removed books that they list. This book is gay, and this is where they go into some of the details. Provides a how-to guide to find strangers on sex for gay sex apps. Out of the Darkness contains a rape Later Gator contains a discussion of the spit or swallow decision.
Oh,
All Boys Aren't Blue contains underage incest. Is Perfectly Normal contains drawings of children masturbating, and it goes on and on and on. And these are only the top 10 most banned books. This means that not every school that's supposedly banned them will not have them stocked on their shelves. A lot of the schools might still have them stocked on the shelves. And it's disgusting. I don't think there's any excuse for it, really, when you're stocking pornographic material for children. But once again, why do the schools have to do it? Why can't they just have it be that these books are available to the public to buy if they want to? And if they're not stocked in schools, that's fine because, well, the parents can still get. Well, it's because people don't read anymore, especially young people. I just got this off the internet. And so some of the recent studies that have been done, the American Psychological Association say that one of every three teenagers has not read a book for pleasure in a year. 23% of adult Americans didn't read a book at all in 2020, and people aged between 15 to 44 only read for an average of 10 minutes or less per day, and this is in comparison to 51-year-olds and above who spend over 50 minutes reading per day. So what ends up happening is that none of these kids actually read because they've had their attention spans destroyed by TikTok and easy YouTube videos to access on their phones and having access to social media on their phones constantly. And they're already getting a nice hefty dose of propaganda through that, but they wouldn't be reading these books if it weren't for the schools stocking them and putting them on the curriculum anyway. So they have to make sure that they get put in front of your kids so they can make sure there's no place for them to escape. But that's why these books aren't actually banned. It just means that sometimes local school districts don't want them stocked on their shelves, and that'll be coming from pressure from the administrators, pressures from the parents, and that's why leftist activists have to work in lockstep with giant international corporations to bully local school districts with lawsuits and other legal fines to force them to do it. It's ridiculous. But if you want an example of a real banned book, one that is really difficult to find, especially if you're trying to find it on Amazon in an English language version, this is the cheapest I could find of an actual proper printing of The Camp of the Saints on eBay for £160, and that's the English version. I think on Amazon, if you can speak French, congratulations, you can get a copy of it for about 12 quid. But for anybody who can't speak French, this is what you're going to do for it.
I actually don't know. I've heard the title before, but I don't know what it's about.
Douglas Murray, of all people, references it in The Strange Death of Europe, and it is a strangely prescient dystopian fiction from the 1960s or 70s, depicting of what would happen, say, for instance, if, and this is a completely outlandish scenario and would never happen, if half of the entire third world decided to get on a boat and come to Europe.
Oh, is this the one about France being Islamic?
Yes.
Right, okay, yeah, I have heard about
So
this.
that's an actual banned book because you can't buy it on Amazon unless you're French. And there are lots of other books that you can't buy on Amazon or anywhere in the UK or Europe very easily without paying exorbitant import charges. And they're not going to be stocked in school libraries either. So if you want an example of what a banned book actually looks like, maybe look elsewhere than your local Barnes & Noble for what's on the banned book shelves. You twats.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this episode on genes, mutants, and modern politics. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.